in hiding when the Russians invaded and occupied Georgia. His family experienced rather extreme poverty, and this is a guy who came through those adverse situations very nicely, and it is really just kind of, and you can tell, and Tony can tell too, he's been around guys. Is he a good guy? Is he a real guy? Does he know who he is? Or is he one of these fake guys? And this is one of those real guys. From a personal perspective, I really like the pick. If he's as good a basketball player as he seems to be a guy, then this is a win.
Tony, we haven't talked at all about Victor Oladipo. Obviously, we expect him to be back this next season, and what an impactful player that he has been for the team. And what a great job that the Pacers were able to do was to be able to pick. When I think a lot of people, myself included, when Victor went out for the season, we were like, well, that's it, we're done, we're toast. Stick a fork in us, we are done. Victor Oladipo is going to be a key component for next season. What are your thoughts?
I think the first thought and question is just when. Is it going to be early in the season? Is it going to be after Christmas? Is it going to be after the deadline? When is he going to be ready to maintain workouts and then get into NBA shape? Because that takes a couple weeks once you are fully cleared. You don't want to rush him back. We kind of maybe saw that in the NBA Finals with Kevin Durant. But I thought they did a good job getting – Warren. I think Warren is a good piece, a guy who can score, and I hope it's not, Tyreek Evans 2.0 minus, the habit of, hey, this was a guy putting up big numbers on a bad team. I like the Warren pickup, and then acquiring that 32nd pick, which they ended up drafting. But my question is on this team, and I think Ken will answer this too. They have money to spend, and it's time to go out and spend money, and you have to get a guy. Hopefully, at least make a run for a guy that can fill some of the void. And just what we know about the Pacers in the past when it comes to free agency is big names don't come here. And just, Harrison Barnes comes to mind, or Wayne Ellington, a guy that is a journeyman guy and kind of hasn't lived up to the expectations, but he's still got tread on the tires, and we got him in here, and we think that he can, fill that scoring void. I hope they bring in a big name, but Ken, it's hard for me to think that they're going to go out and get a level A or even a level B superstar. I think that they're batting in that C, D, and E level, and guys like Harrison Barnes comes to mind. I would love Tobias Harris, but I don't think he's even going to come here.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really hard to make the case for Indiana to bring somebody who would be one of those guys that ESPN's going to invite on set. If you're on set on ESPN, I don't think you're one of the guys who's going to come to the Pacers. I think the Pacers can go out and do what they did with Warren, though, and they can make a deal, accept cap space in the form of these guys who can play, and figure it out that way. Instead of trying to keep Bojan Bogdanović at $18 or $20 million a year, you get Warren, who's under contract for the next 3 at between $10.8 and $13 million. That's the way they've got to do business. I think that was they got a good starting level 3 for nothing. They gave away nothing and got that guy, got the 32nd overall pick. They spin the 32nd into 3 future second-round picks. That's the way they're going to have to do business, and they're going to have to hit on these draft guys. They need Bitadze to be really, really good. They can't afford to swing and a miss in the first round. Victor, Kevin said yesterday, they expect him back December or January, but that's a fluid situation. He could come back maybe a little bit quicker. It might be a little bit delayed. They're unsure how that's going to work. Without Victor Oladipo, there's really no selling what this team could be to a free agent in the short term. And that winds up that's a little bit debilitating for Kevin and the guys to go out and make a pitch. But I think that one of the things that you see, and you see it with Salt Lake City, is they look like a team that could contend in the West after their acquisition. You've got Toronto. They just won the NBA championship. You've got Milwaukee, which is a smaller market and probably kind of a less cool town than Indianapolis. And they're going to be really good for the foreseeable future as long as they got the freak. It can be done, but you got to be really, really clever. And as far as kind of a big market bias, look at the Lakers. The Lakers are a train wreck. The Knicks are a train wreck. The Nets they're trying to put something together, but they always swing and miss. The Clippers, kind of the same deal. If Kawhi goes out to the Clippers, that's a different situation. But, I think that you can do it in a small market. You just got to get really lucky to distance yourself among these 30 franchises and really the 16 that are operated reasonably well. And if you do that, and I think these guys are in a position to do it. I think Kevin's a smart guy, and he's got good guys around him. But you've got to hit on draft picks. And I think a guy like Goga is where they've really got to make their hay. And then secondarily, an acquisition like Warren, which I think was really smart, where they gave away no basketball assets, and they get a really good player in return.
Tony, who are the winners and losers of the NBA draft?
I really like what Boston did. It's clear that Kyrie's not going to be there, and they're going to have to make some clever moves. And we know Horford is leaving as well. But I wanted Romeo at 18. If it was the Pacers selection, that would have been big. I know a lot of people criticize that, but New Orleans, who is continuing to just gain assets, and it's going to be a whole new look for the Pelicans when you get Zion. I don't think there was as many trades as what we've seen in the years past. It's the obvious, clear, easy answers for me to say the Pelicans, but I like what some other teams did as far as just getting guys in there. And I really like what Cleveland did, obviously grabbing Dylan Windler, who is a local product here, who can knock down shots. There were some teams that I thought, do I think the Pacers are a winner of a draft? No. And like Ken said, they're going to have to hit on this guy because they haven't hit lately on draft picks. The judgment is still out on Aaron Holiday, who showed spurts last year that he could play in the NBA, but also shown that he was a rookie, so he's got a lot to learn. TJ Leaf, I'm not sure would make any other roster in the league at this point, even though, the Pacers were high on him. So, back to the Pacers, you got to hit on these draft picks, as Ken said, and you've got to make sure that you're getting guys in free agency that are going to make you a better team, because I think the patience of the Pacers fan base right now is starting to get thinner and thinner, knowing, as Ken said, it's tough to bring in these big-name free agents, the ESPN set guys, and they haven't really drafted all the best because they're not going to tank as a franchise, and that's fine. I don't like to be a part or watch from afar of a team that wants to tank, but they flirt with that mid to late teens pick, and it's hard to land superstars there. Even though the Raptors didn't have any picks on their team this year that were lottery picks, that's like the rare case. That may not ever happen again in this day and age in the NBA.
We're talking with Kent Sterling and Tony Donahue, Kent Sterling at KentSterling.com, and Tony Donahue of the Tony D podcast, just talking some NBA draft. Kent, what did we learn from the championship this year? Game 7, Toronto takes down the Warriors. Should we be excited that a team from Canada won the NBA championship because the Warriors got beat? Should we be excited that the Warrior dynasty might be to an end? I don't know. Maybe not. The Canadians kind of got on. I'm going to go on a little soapbox here. I love Canadians. I got a lot of friends that are Canadians, and I love Canadian race. One of my favorite drivers, James Hinchcliffe, is Canadian. So I got nothing against Canada as a whole. But there was a little bit of a double standards there. When we look back at the women's team, when they won, the Canadian news broadcast said, well, the Americans over-celebrated. They ran up the score. They should have never done that. But then we go to Toronto, and the Warriors, and Kevin Durant goes down, and the Canadians are cheering for an injury. It just seems like that was a little bit of a double standard. But what did we learn from this year's NBA Finals, Game 7? For the first time ever, there was, and I do want to talk about my St. Louis Blues, but for the first time ever, there was a Canadian championship, Game 7, and an NHL Stanley Cup Game 7. First time ever, 2 teams got the first championship ever in their franchise history. So what did we learn, Kent?
Well, we learned that Kawhi Leonard is a beast. We learned that he's really good, and that people who didn't think that he was really good, they were wrong. And I think Kawhi Leonard, not from a talent perspective, but from a behavior perspective, I think he can draw some parallels to Romeo Langford, right? Where Kawhi is a stoic. And I think that a lot of people thought, especially because of the way he sat out last year with the Spurs, they thought he was indifferent to basketball. Well, he didn't look indifferent to basketball at all during the NBA Finals, so we learned that. I think that this is actually bad for the NBA, this championship for Toronto, not because it's Canada, but because that team's going to kind of splinter apart. As soon as Kawhi leaves, assuming that he leaves, they're going to be an entirely different franchise. We learned that the Warriors, minus Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson, are just a really, really good team and not a championship-level team. They still almost won Game 6 without two of the best players in the NBA. They're going to be on the shelf for likely the entire season next year. So there's going to be a window at least, depending on where Durant goes and where Thompson goes. I assume Thompson's going to stay and Durant's going to go. But depending on what their disposition is as free agents, that team is either going to experience a one-year window where it's not quite as competitive and the West can be had by virtually anybody. But then I think that they're going to come back, and with just Klay, I think with just Klay and Steph and Cousins, if he's back, I think you got a chance to be a championship-level team again. But I think it's going to be fun to see the West kind of be wide open and be able to see a team like Salt Lake City, like Utah, see those guys compete. I think Denver is going to be really, really good. I don't see the Lakers being as good as other people do. It seems like every offseason, people glom onto the LeBron James train and say wherever he's at. And this past year, we saw it with the Lakers, that they're going to be exceptionally competitive. Anthony Davis is a wonderful basketball player. They've got two of the best five players in the NBA, but they have nobody else, and they really don't have the means to go. They could get one more terrific max-level player, and then they've got to go get minimum guys, and I don't see that being terribly competitive, at least not over the long haul of an NBA season for 82 games with a 35-year-old kind of leading actor. So I think we've learned those things. I'm Toronto, I think the NBA got what it deserved in this deal, and I don't think it. Yeah, although I don't think it would have been great for Milwaukee either. I think the NBA is at its best when it's kind of the Celtics and the Lakers, or the Lakers and the Bulls, or God forbid, the Knicks ever got good, because that would be a TV magnet type team. I don't think it's good for the NBA to have a team like Toronto win the thing.
Speaking of Canada, I heard a nasty rumor this week that Tampa Bay baseball team might be moving to Montreal. Any thoughts on that, Tony or Kent? Go ahead.
Well, they split it, right? Or they're talking about splitting it between Tampa and Montreal. And this is what you get when you build a bandbox as a stadium. That is not a great baseball experience down in Tampa Bay. That area is filled with people who are not indigenous to Tampa Bay, so that's always going to be a tough sell. They're going to come out and watch the Yankees, or they're going to come out and watch the Cubs or the White Sox if the Cubs ever get down there. A lot of people from Chicago, a lot of people from New York, and so to me, Tampa Bay is not a great Major League Baseball franchise city. And if we saw that, why they would decide to go back to Montreal, I have no idea. When we see franchises fail in a city, there's a reason it failed, and to ignore that initial reason and think you can just kind of spackle over it, I think is just stupid.
Well, they are now the old Montreal team is now the Nationals, correct? Am I correct on that? I think so.
Yes.
Hello? Yeah.
Yeah.
Tony,
if you're gonna do this, you gotta go back to the Expos at least logos, right? If you're gonna do this, you gotta go back to the Expos logos. I mean, the Rays doesn't sell any merchandise, so if you're gonna do this and you're gonna expand and hope it works, because like Ken said, there's a reason why it didn't work the first time. There's a reason why, when these teams move, there's a reason for it. There's a reason why they, NBA hasn't gone back to Seattle for a while, and may not for a couple more years until they get that hockey team, but if you're going to do this, you got to do it with, it's got to be the Expos, right? You can't go up there and call them the Montreal Rays. That doesn't sound right. So at least change the name for the Expos if you're going to do this.
Yeah, make it a thing of nostalgic. I think a lot of people like nostalgic. I mean, baseball teams all year long will go back into the throwback jersey. So I think you're onto something there. Tony. All right, guys, final thoughts and words of wisdom, if you will.